Is 7:06. I apologize for the delay. We'll call tonight's meeting to order and start with the Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
The summer concert series hosted by Grafton Recreation begins next Thursday, July 16th with Hit the Bus. Remember, the location changes week to week. This concert will be held at Ferry Street Park starting at 6 p.m. Grafton Recreation is receiving a floating beach wheelchair from the grant they are awarded by Smile Mass. Join them for the ribbon cutting ceremony at Silver Lake Beach on Tuesday, August 4th at 11 a.m. We are going to pause briefly. Before we begin our hearings tonight, we would like to acknowledge the passing of longtime Grafton resident Paul Letourneau. Paul served as a dedicated member of our Accessibility Advisory Commission for the past 3 years, and we would like to acknowledge and appreciate his service to the town and extend our condolences to his family and friends and take a moment to honor him. In addition, we also wish to honor the memory of Massachusetts State Trooper Jacob Mick, who tragically lost his life in an off-duty accident here in Grafton. We offer our deepest sympathies to his family and his fellow troopers during their time of unfathomable grief. So please join me in a moment of silence. We have 3 public hearings tonight. We'll start with a poll petition by National Grid for Keith Hill Road. We'll read the legal notice, please.
The Select Board will hold a public hearing on the request of National Grid and Verizon New England, Inc. for permission to locate poles, wires, and fixtures, including the necessary sustaining and protecting fixtures along and across the following public way. Keith Hill Road. National Grid to install 1 JO pole on Keith Hill Road, beginning at a point approximately 45 feet southwest of the center line of the intersection of Old Upton Road and Keith Hill Road. National Grid to relocate P57 approximately 32 feet northwest of existing P57 on east side of Keith Hill Road. The public hearing will be held on July 7th, 2026 in Conference Room A of the Grafton Memorial Municipal Center, located 30 Providence Road, starting at 7 p.m. Remote participation will be available using Zoom webinar. Interested citizens are invited to attend this public hearing and offer comments in writing, in person, or via Zoom. Written comments must be received by noon on Thursday, July 2nd, 2026. I move the board vote to open the public hearing.
Second.
Okay, motion made, seconded. Any discussion? Hearing none, by roll call, Ms. Roy.
Aye.
Ms. Dauphiné.
Dauphiné, aye.
Ms. Duckworth.
Aye.
Ms. Foley.
Foley, aye.
Jefferson, aye. Okay. See Michael Iberger on there.
Hello, how's it going?
Good evening. Thank you for coming in tonight. Could you just walk us through the first proposed relocation?
Sure.
Hello, I can
Oh, yeah,
jump
go
in
ahead.
here because I did this time. Basically, we want to relocate this pole because we are relocating pole 36 too to get that out of the intersection. And
I'm
pole
sorry, Mrs. O, can I
57
interrupt you for a moment?
Yeah.
Is there a way that you could get possibly closer to your microphone, or it's
I'm
you're very
sorry.
quiet on our end?
Can you hear me better now?
Not really.
Let's see. Hello?
Maybe.
Oh no. strange. I've never had issues
That's better.
before.
That's whatever you're doing now
Feels
is much
better?
better. Yep.
Okay, glad to hear that.
Thank you.
So basically, we are also relocating pole 36 because it's in the middle of the intersection. Want to get out the way, and so pole 57 is to support that relocation. It will help remove any kind of issues we would have if we didn't relocate pole 57.
That makes sense. Does anybody have any questions for National Grid? Okay. Any questions or comments from the audience? Okay. Hearing none. This first one is, I know 2 polls were mentioned. This first one is just for P57. The next hearing after that will be for is that P36. So right now we're just the one poll, but we'll need to do both. So can take a motion.
I move the board vote to approve and sign the poll petition by National Grid for Keith Hill Road as presented.
Second.
Okay, motion made and seconded. Any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor, Ms. Roy?
Aye.
Ms. Dauphiné?
Aye.
Ms. Duckworth?
Aye.
Ms. Foley?
Foley, aye.
Jefferson, aye. Motion passed unanimously.
Close the hearing.
Yes. Do we have to close each of these hearings before? Yeah.
I move
Okay.
the board close the public hearing.
Second.
Okay, motion made and seconded. By roll call, Ms. Roy?
Aye.
Ms. Dauphiné?
Aye.
Ms. Duckworth?
Aye.
Ms. Foley?
Foley, aye.
Jefferson, aye.
The select board will hold a public hearing on the request of National Grid and Verizon New England Inc. for permission to locate poles, wires, and fixtures, including the necessary sustaining and protecting fixtures along and across the following public way: Old Upton Road. National Grid to install 1 JO pole on Old Upton Road beginning at a point approximately 50 feet east of the center line of the intersection of Old Upton Road and Keith Hill Road. National Grid to relocate P36 approximately 50 feet east of existing P36 on south side of Old Upton Road. The public hearing will be held on July 7th, 2026 in Conference Room A of the Grafton Memorial Municipal Center located at 30 Providence Road starting at 7 p.m. Remote participation will be available using the Zoom webinar. Interested citizens are invited to attend this public hearing and offer comments in writing, in person, or via Zoom. Written comments must be received by noon on Thursday, July 2nd, 2026. I move the board vote to open the public hearing.
Second.
Okay, motion made and seconded. By roll call, Ms. Roy?
Aye.
Mr. Dauphiné?
Dauphiné, aye.
Ms. Duckworth?
Aye.
Ms. Foley?
Foley, aye.
Jefferson, aye. Okay, does anybody have any additional questions on this? It was just covered in the last description, but anything from anybody?
Motion to close the public hearing?
Second.
Well, anybody in the audience? Any questions? Okay. Motion made and seconded. Ms. Roy?
Aye.
Ms. Dauphiné?
Dauphiné, aye.
Ms. Duckworth?
Aye.
Ms. Foley?
Foley, aye.
Jefferson, aye.
I move the board vote to approve and sign the poll petition by National Grid for Old Upton Road as presented.
Second.
Okay. Motion made and seconded. Any discussion? Hearing none. Ms. Roy?
Aye.
Ms. Dauphiné?
Dauphiné, aye.
Ms. Duckworth?
Aye.
Ms. Foley?
Foley, aye.
Jefferson, aye. Okay, and finally,
The select board will hold a public hearing on the request of National Grid and Verizon New England Inc. for permission to locate poles, wires, and fixtures, including the necessary sustaining and protecting fixtures along and across the following public way: Wesson Street. National Grid to relocate 1 JO pole on Wesson Street, beginning at a point approximately 830 feet southeast of the center line of the intersection of Willard Street. National Grid to relocate 145-foot Class 2 pole number P33 on Wesson Street. P33 has a history of being in motor vehicle accidents since it was placed on a tight corner. This pole will feed a new riser pole, P33-2, on the property of 82 Wesson Street. The public hearing will be held on July 7th, 2026 in Conference Room A of the Grafton Memorial Municipal Center, located at 30 Providence Road starting at 7 p.m. Remote participation will be available using Zoom. Interested citizens are invited to attend this public hearing and offer comments in writing, in person, or via Zoom. Written comments must be received by noon on Thursday, July 2nd, 2026. I move the board vote to open the public hearing.
Second.
okay, motion made and seconded. Ms. Roy?
Aye.
Ms. Dauphiné?
Dauphiné, aye.
Ms. Duckworth?
Aye.
Ms. Foley?
Foley, aye.
Jefferson, aye. Okay, Abigail, do you want to walk us through this pole placement?
I could talk about this one. I actually did
Okay.
the design for this. Yeah, so it's pretty straightforward. It's similar to the other ones where it just keeps getting hit. So I met out there with operations, and we agree that across the street will be a much better location for it. and should significantly reduce the motor vehicle accidents in that area in terms of poles being hit.
Okay. Any questions, comments, concerns from the board? It is in a bit of a precarious place. Do we have any questions or comments from the public? Okay, seeing none.
I move the board vote to close the public hearing.
Second.
Okay. Motion made and seconded. Ms. Roy?
Aye.
Mr. Dauphiné?
Dauphiné, aye.
Ms. Duckworth?
Aye.
Ms. Foley?
Foley, aye.
Jefferson, aye.
I move the board vote to approve and sign the poll petition by National Grid for Weston Street as presented.
Second.
Okay, motion made and seconded. Ms. Roy?
Aye.
Mr. Dauphiné?
Dauphiné, aye.
Ms. Duckworth?
Aye.
Ms. Foley?
Foley, aye.
Jefferson, aye. All right. I don't think we've ever done three back-to-back-to-back public hearings in a night. That was
Last
something.
time.
Move not to do that.
It was just one, wasn't it? No. Oh, okay. Honestly. Any public comment tonight for anything that's not on the agenda? Nothing? Okay, great. We have no appointments from the select board or the town administrator, so we can move right into new business and into our joint meeting with the planning board, if you guys want to call yourselves to order.
Sure, I'll call this meeting of the Grafton Planning Board to order. I believe we're all here, so no need for a roll call.
Okay, great. So we will start off with appointing the associate member for your team. We have two applicants tonight. Just going by the order they are on the paper. Sean Tatum, do you want to come up?
Hi, my name is Sean Tatum. Some of you might remember me from the last meeting. I bought a house in Grafton a couple years ago. My husband's from town. My whole family lives here. I love Grafton. I'm very much trying to get involved. I saw the planning board opening, and just from living here, some things I've noticed, like Article 97 land I have on my street that I feel like is in disarray, and there's invasive plants going on. Institute Road, I see all the development happening there, and so I'm just kind of concerned about environmental issues in the town, how we can grow business sustainably, and just looking forward to the future of Grafton.
Okay. Any questions?
Any questions from the planning board?
What background do you have in any town government functions?
I don't. This would be new for me. Like I said, I'm just trying to get involved somewhere, and I think that this would be a great opportunity for me to also learn the processes.
You then haven't looked particularly at the laws we operate under.
I have. I read the master plan.
Well,
Love that.
thinking of Chapter 48 and our zoning and whatnot. Okay.
So I'll just say, welcome back.
Thank you.
Thanks for coming back. And
Oh, yeah.
you're gonna go from the frying pan into the fire here. So if you get appointed, it is a great place to learn. That's where I started. Learned a lot from this gentleman right over here. I'm not gonna tell you the year because it was a long time ago, but it is, you touch so many different departments and so many projects and interact with so many other boards. It's a great place to start. So appreciate you coming up again and giving it another try here.
Of course.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Next up, we have Marlon Mahendra.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Marlon Mahendra. My wife and I moved to Grafton a few years ago because, we believed everything this town has to offer, and honestly, it's delivered. The schools, the trails along Blackstone, the diversity in the community, the fact that you can be on the commuter rail to Boston in under an hour and then also come back to something that still, feels like a real community. I believed in all of that, and I still do. I have a 10-month-old, and when I look at him, I think about what Grafton looks like in 10, 15, 20 years. Whether the opportunities that brought us here are still going to be, here for my kids, and that's why I'm standing in front of you guys tonight. We have plans, for the Transit Village overlay district that's been on the books for years. We have routes 30 and 140 corridors that, you know, feel like they have real commercial potential. We have so many commuters to Boston that live in Grafton, but aren't really benefiting from some of the same advantages that most of the Boston suburbs receive. I come from a background in business and finance. I spend my professional life evaluating whether investments make sense, from the return, what it looks like in 10 years, what are the risks, what the picture looks like, you know, a decade out. And I'm hoping that skill set is valuable to the planning committee. More commercial development done right means lower pressure on residential taxpayers. It means more jobs, more services, more reasons for businesses and families to choose Grafton over the town, you know, down the road, and more reason for families to stay here. Grafton has the bones to be not only one of the strongest towns in Worcester County, but also in Massachusetts. And I want to help build that future for my family and yours. So thank you for your consideration.
Thank you. Any questions from the planning board?
Again, have you had any other involvement in town government?
This was also my first time doing this. Wanted to get, you know, put my feet in, get like kind of like how you were, Craig, just starting out, and I think it's a great place to learn. But I am pretty heavily involved in the Worcester community as well. I work with my wife in the Worcester Free Clinic and volunteer there. So always been about community development and kind of just want to do it in Grafton.
And again, any familiarity with the laws that we have to work with?
Yeah, I had the same answer. I read through, but other than that, not really.
You know, the financial visibility. A little later, we're going to be talking about data centers
Yeah.
and how financially viable they are for us. Okay, thank you.
I think one thing I'll just add, because in your letter to the town, you said, where is it? That you want us to go to the commercial tax base, you want to be a part of making those decisions. And the only thing to really add is the planning board is primarily responsible for enforcing the zoning laws and the laws the town passes around zoning.
Yep.
Which any business that comes before us that has a right to do their work under the rules we set, that's basically a yes, whether we think it's a good business, whether we think it's gonna give the town more financial stability or anything like that. That part of the decision making is not really,
It's really not really in that part.
not
yeah.
really in that part so much.
Understood. Yeah.
Dave, did you have
So, I didn't get a chance to ask Sean the same question, which I wasn't quite quick enough to trigger. But anyway, the question is, a lot of the work the planning board does, and Bob sort of alluded to it, is reviewing and approving permits and reviewing and proposing amendments to zoning bylaws. So how good are you at reading legalese, state laws, town bylaws, rules and regulations? So
Yeah, I work. So my day job is I work for an AI company, and they do AI for credit unions and small banks, and I basically am on the customer relationship side. I have to review all the contracts with those clients, so I get all the good, bad, and ugly. So pretty familiar with that.
What kind of company did you say?
An AI company.
AI?
Yeah.
Is it a name we would know?
It's called Interface. We do. You probably would recognize the clients. Like we have Webster 5, Worcester Community Credit Union, all those ones.
AI is kind of on our agenda tonight. As you, maybe even you know that.
Yeah, I saw it on the agenda. Yeah.
Well, it's a popular subject this week.
Yeah.
any others? Select board.
Anything from the select board?
Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you.
And we can give Sean the opportunity to come back up and answer that question for you, Dave, if he's willing.
Okay.
Sorry, can you ask the question again, please?
Yeah, so a lot of what the planning board deals with are things, rules and regulations and laws. So the question is, how good are you at reading legalese which is a language of its own, if you've ever had any contact with it.
Well, I'm certainly not a lawyer, but I am a learned man, and I am a great reader, and there's nothing that I can't learn, so I'm not, that doesn't intimidate me. I can learn whatever you guys need me to learn.
Yes, and as you know, as others have noted, there's a lot to learn. You've got experienced people here that would be happy to help out. But yeah, the desire to learn and the ability to learn is key.
I do have one follow-up question for you, Sean. Because you did express interest in a number of other boards and committees. Would this be your top choice, or is there something else you're a little, because, you know, this just happens to be the one we're appointing this week. We have to post for 2 weeks, but we will be appointing others at upcoming meetings.
This is my top choice, but if I've demonstrated anything tonight, it's that I'm not going to give up till I'm in something, so.
I love that.
Anybody
you.
else have any additional questions?
The cable committee's looking for people.
Fortunately, that wasn't on the list.
Hmm?
That was not on his list, unfortunately.
Oh, well,
Yeah, don't do that.
I know that's the top of your list, but
no, it's the chair's list,
All right.
We should probably remind the applicants that the associate member is typically a non-voting member.
Sure. So unless designated by the chair, the associate member is not a voting member, and it's usually designation happens during a special permit where we need a certain number of votes. But it is, as people mentioned, that's how I started. You know, it's a great way to learn the ropes. You can speak freely in the meeting and ask questions, right? So there's a lot that you can bring to it.
yeah, it's specifically the one place that the associate has a chance to vote is on a special permit when we're short someone who's eligible to vote. You don't get to vote on the other stuff, but you get to be there with us and participate as far as all the chairs I've ever known.
Most definitely. All right, any other questions or discussion? This is my first joint meeting, so we're essentially waiting for a motion? Is that how we go about it?
Yep.
All right, so we'll be entertaining a motion.
I'll say these are both seem very capable and strong candidates to join us on the planning board. I'd be thrilled to have either one on us. And for the first time of holding these meetings with myself, I don't have opinion that sways me to make a motion for one of them because they're both
AI.
they're very, very good candidates.
Hmm?
They're very good candidates. It's a good problem to have.
Mr. Chair,
Ms. Foley?
I move that we appoint Marlon Mahendra as the associate member of the planning board.
Second.
Motion made and seconded. Any discussion?
Any from our end? Hearing none.
We do, forgive me, because it's been a minute. We do the whole group by roll call? Okay. So, hearing no additional comment or discussion, Mr. Hassinger? Mr. Dalamole?
Aye.
Ms. Roy?
Aye.
Mr. Duffin?
Definitely.
Ms. Duckworth?
Aye.
Mr. Robbins?
Aye.
Mr. Wood?
Aye.
Mr. Rock?
Aye.
Jefferson's aye. Ms. Foley?
Foley, aye.
Thank you. Okay. Well, congratulations, Mr. Mahendra. Again, Sean, please do come back. I'm sure we will see you with some of these other committees in the coming weeks. I'm sure you'll get on one of those. Thank you both for coming in tonight. You are welcome to stay, but under no obligation.
Thank you both.
Okay. So next up, we have a discussion relative to zoning for data centers. Did they receive a copy? I should have asked you this before. Of the municipalities that you shared with the select board and
It's in the packet.
the approaches.
Yes.
I know it's in our packet. I don't know if it was in.
We did get an explicit email about that. Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, we were all,
Yeah, I read it.
if, for those of us who might not regularly check the meeting packet, staff did email to all of the board members the link to the packet.
Great. So I believe, and anybody jump in, correct me if I'm wrong, but from a select board perspective, this is something that we would like the planning department and the planning board to explore and draft some language, come up with some ideas so that we, get started in a very pressing topic that's happening now across several municipalities. So, really, I think that was our expectation at this point, was that we would just kick off the discussion. So I'm happy to turn it over to you and if you have thoughts, or if it's something that I believe at your last meeting you guys started kicking it around a little bit. So
Yeah, Christian, Christian put together a nice memo for us. We had, from our last conversation, said there was a couple areas that we wanted to dig into. Christian, I don't know if you want to give kind of just a short flyover of that work that you did in sort of looking at examples from other towns, and then also, with no changes, where could a data center actually land up in the existing zoning? So I think that's helpful context for everybody. So maybe you can just give us a little bit of a backdrop there, and then we can open up the conversation. Does that work for everybody?
that'd be great. Yeah.
Sure. So I just did a high-level review and memo, nothing comprehensive, just to prepare for this meeting. But some things we looked at were some of the towns locally that have made attempts to prepare for potential large-scale projects. Mansfield is a great example that we looked at. A couple other towns and cities have looked at moratorium. So just looking at what's already happening. A recent development I think is important, especially for this conversation, just a couple weeks ago, is that the state paused their tax incentive program, making building large-scale data centers much less competitive in Massachusetts. Now, Massachusetts, with the pause, is one of about 10 states that does not have any incentive program. That's intended to allow time for towns and cities to prepare for these types of conversations and implement something. Without having a firm legal interpretation of where a data center may fall into our bylaws, where I believe it could happen is in our light industrial or business building. The light industrial use would require a special permit. That's probably the most likely example, but again, it would take some legal assistance and interpretation to determine if that is allowable. That's what other towns have also identified where that would fall into. But just with that high level view, I think we're prepared to go over questions, concerns, or what an approach for Grafton might look like.
Great. Thanks, Christian. Yeah, and I'll just add that I think some of the discussion we had last time was first about that, where could it end up today, hypothetically, and that includes some of the village mixed use, so there's discussion there about is that appropriate or not. And then in that light industrial designation, there's no real limit on the power use or the use of municipal water, right? So these are also concerns, right, where it seems like the existing language is not specific enough to deal with this particular case, right? So, and then the last thing I'll say, and I'll open up to the rest of the board, is that some of the context here would be trying to do something for town meeting in the fall. And so if you look at what other towns have done, there are time caps, moratoriums. Right. And then there are folks, for like the example that was included here, where they came up with something much more specific. So I think that's one of the other things that factors in for us is there enough time between now and town meeting to come up with something specific enough that's going to hold the test of time, or are we really talking about potentially a kind of time limited moratorium? But I guess that's my kind of broad backdrop. I don't know if there are other folks on the planning board that want to add.
Yeah, so
we know Bob does.
As I quipped at the last planning board meeting we discussed, I could probably talk for several hours on the subject, so I'm not going to go into that much detail for sure. I am in a career where my current company does benefit from AI boom right now, so there is some benefit for that, but it wouldn't really affect me directly, so it's not really any conflict to say that out loud. But the aspects is I'm generally not opposed to data centers, even in Grafton. I think the one that is on the news in Massachusetts, the giant building that's, you know, what, 10 stories tall or something, I have no idea, is probably outside the limits of what I would like in this town for both the size, you know, how it shows up, and still the water and electrical use would be a big concern, and how it impacts both the town and neighbors. So there's a lot to figure out in that space. I would be personally in favor of doing a moratorium for 1 or 2 years even, and we can, if the town feels like we're ready to enact the appropriate bylaw even before the moratorium is lifted, we can still lift it early. So that's, you know, kind of where I'm at right now, and as a brief.
Bob?
Okay. I've been thinking about this for who knows how much. Christian, do you think I'd be right to say that all of the possible places that this would fall in the zoning would require a special permit?
It's possible that it could fall under a more standard business use, potentially, being conservative, and that there are some by right uses, I believe, of that.
Okay. That's,
It could. Sorry, go ahead.
no, go ahead.
Depending on the size, there's by right use of business offices in the industrial zone and the community business zone, and a couple other smaller zones.
Yeah, is there an upper limit on the size that?
That would be very small, so.
Just very small.
5,000, well.
Yeah.
5,000.
That's what I'm.
Yeah.
We're talking, what, 300,000 square feet up at Wyman Gordon, or 200,000 square feet, depending on how many floors. This is a very dynamic situation right now. I don't totally have where the legislature is, but I understand that they're developing legislation that will speak to a lot of the concerns and cover a lot of this ground. At the same time, the ground is moving fast. You know, the technology moves fast. By the time one of these things gets built, we'll be in the next generation of computers, and then 3 years from then we'll be on the next generation of computers and what they want and how they do it. So it's really a moving target. In Grafton's case, and with the places where there could be significant impacts, significantly sized developments, I think that being under special permit and being subject to a lot of negotiation about taxes, you know, there's TIFs and there's, I don't know all of them. I just looked it up, and you've got ones I don't even know about. But there's a lot of negotiation that you can do to get what you want, and apparently that's been going on a lot. So I'm a little more sanguine about what we need to do. I think what Christian has in his memo is good for us to go forward looking into. But about the only thing that I'd look at is to see if there's anything we want to do in the bylaw in general about special permits. I've been a little bit bothered about a few of the items in 1.5.5 of the CBL, which is where, I think that's where we list the there's a list of a dozen or so findings that the board must make. But as far as I know, there's nothing to stop the board from making other findings also. So we have a fair amount of flexibility, ability to cover the ground in the near term. And I would say let's do basically look at it And, particularly as far as I'm concerned, see if there's anything we wanna, strengthen for now, but don't try to write comprehensive laws, because by the time we got them written, the problem's gonna be different. It keeps moving, and the state's changing the ground under us a lot. And it looks, the little bit I've been able to get from the House, and then the Senate, and the House, and the whatever, they're looking at some pretty strong, measures to address the concerns that everybody has.
So to that point, in some of the examples that were given, would you consider like a Mansfield or a Northborough to be too comprehensive at this point?
Yeah, I don't think it's the, if they wanna do it, okay, but we wouldn't mind the financial, benefits that might come from it. Even the folks up, on Worcester Street might not mind not having hundreds of trucks every day, and instead having a quiet, closed-up building over there that we could get set further back and heavily sound isolated, as an example. That site has an interesting advantage. The high lines, the electric company's high lines run right past, and in fact, Wyman Gordon pulls a lot of power off those lines already. And so the challenges for someone to get the power they need here at that site would be much less of a problem for them, and for the community, and for the cost, than many other places where the power company has to run high lines, or at least heavy distribution.
So just to clarify, what I was hearing you say earlier is that we're aiming for October town meeting for either go for a moratorium or a more comprehensive language, and that's what
That's
we're
the
kind
next chance to do it.
right. And that's kind of what this discussion is here tonight, is to task you guys with deciding which lever to pull, go with a moratorium or more comprehensive language for October. And I just wanted to recap that. That's what we're doing right now.
Yeah, again, my opinion of the conversation was kind of looking to them for guidance. Is a moratorium something you'd want to explore to give yourselves the time to, further investigate what potential, disruptions this could cause or wouldn't cause, or, because just seeing that other so many towns have done it differently. There are other towns that have skipped the moratorium phase and, fairly quickly decided what it is they want to allocate to the zoning.
Yeah, I think, we need a little more time to do some research. Like when you read the examples here, they make sense, right? But we don't know exactly how all of it's going to play out. I mean, and I don't know if anybody else shares this, but I also, in the next year or two, I personally am concerned about the water. Yep. Because we've got both sides of town with a well down, and we have facilities being built, but if they're delayed or until those facilities are online, it's hard to predict what kind of draw can come for a facility like this.
They're not gonna have water. The water district will tell them if they have the water, and when the water district says no way, they don't build. But the data centers that are getting built now aren't using public water, just flowing it through and dumping it out. They're using refrigeration, electricity, to do the cooling, which brings you to my thing about sound. You need to put the fans for the air conditioning where they're isolated from noise. We might want to look at whether it's time finally to have any kind of sound bylaws generally for the town. But I think those would be folded into whatever negotiations we have going on if someone were showing up in the near term. But the water, both the power and the water, to me are not, don't look to me like major problems for us because of our particular circumstances and the way it's going. What's the thing?
Well, really,
Understanding
the question.
how the taxes go, because the personal property apparently decreases in value fairly rapidly. So, you know, you have personal property tax and you have this, that, and that tax.
Yeah, and I mean, I understand that they're gonna try to be as efficient as possible in their facility, but what I'm getting at is, in the current bylaw, there's nothing that limits their use of the water or the power, right? So that's my concern, is how do you address that so that we know we have something to point to if somebody decides to take an approach? I think Dave had something.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of details that we can talk about, but I think in my opinion right now, there is so much change, so much movement. Communities are starting to, a lot of communities are starting to figure out how to face this. Several communities have passed or are proposing to pass zoning bylaws dealing specifically with data centers. The state has, just instituted sort of a temporary pause on a tax benefit. The papers, the document that the state just came out, kind of covers a lot of the territory. But I think for Grafton, I would be more comfortable dealing with, creating a zoning bylaw or whatever else we need after we know more and we see other folks' experience with this. I don't feel a need for Grafton to invent the wheel for this, and for the purpose of incorporating data centers into our zoning bylaw, I'd like to defer consideration of that until we see more about what's going on in the communities around us, what the state is doing to regulate it, because we run the risk of regulating the wrong thing if we just jump into it like some towns have, and then they do what they want to do. But for me, it seems like a moratorium for a year or two. Basically, what that would mean was in our zoning bylaw we create a definition of data centers so we know what we're putting a moratorium on. But beyond that, we continue to do research on it. We continue to do some investigation on that, and find a way that we think works best for us, in the longer term. But I'm not generally a fan of jumping into something as soon as it becomes a hot topic, with the exception of kind of putting a hold on any potential data center development within Grafton. But to me, and I think we would want to, if the planning boards are going to come up with something, we would want to discuss this further, because not only do we want to, would we potentially put a moratorium on it. Now we would also have to map out a path for what are we ultimately aiming for, because a moratorium is generally time limited, 1 or 2 years, and it's specifically for the purpose of addressing the zoning issues that need to be addressed. That's basically the purpose of a zoning moratorium. We are constrained in what we can do with a moratorium to begin with. But if we take that route, then we can buy ourselves a year or two to continue to watch what other communities are doing, continue to watch what's changing in the industry, and get a better sense of how we want to address the topic in our zoning. And I think how we want to address it, sort of depends upon the size and the resource requirements of any proposed data center. But those are details that I think I could come up with some ideas looking at what other towns have done. But I prefer that we take however much time we need to figure out how best to accommodate this in Grafton.
Just Craig said.
So I got just a couple questions. So just so for everybody's edification, including my own. So kind of the characteristics of or concerns of these data centers are the size of the structure, the noise, traffic, use of utilities. I think the water question would obviously be solved in a pre-planning meeting with the water district, and that probably before they even got to to file an application. But are those the concerns of these facilities? Is like I understand creating a bylaw form like we do with I'm totally for that. I think we need to do that like we did for the marijuana. So we allow it, but it's in a location that we feel is appropriate, right?
Traffic is not a problem. They have very small number of people typically in.
Okay, so not a lot of employees.
Yeah.
Not a lot of
Very
employees.
few.
Okay.
Small
Other than
parking
setup.
lot.
Like sometimes if they're setting up certain equipment, they might have a bunch coming out once for a little
These
while.
things
but-
just run.
Yeah,
Yeah,
security people, and,
Okay.
but it's really just rooms full of solid of computers doing their thing. And there's somebody probably somewhere with a typewriter,
Okay.
with a terminal.
Right.
I shy away from moratorium. It's been a long time since we tried to do a moratorium. Do you remember? It didn't go well.
It did.
And so
Yeah.
that encourages me to look at more sublime ways to, just if we don't have big exposures that we're worried about that we can't cover under our current situation, then
Right.
do something.
Well, that's one of my questions. Like, what if we look at if it's OLI and it's industrial, right? Wyman is straight industrial, or is that OLI?
Both. The Wyman Gordon property is
Yeah.
split.
I mean, that's where I initially, that's what came to mind, that parcel, which would be great, right? If we could limit it to that. But we have a couple of months, right, before fall town meeting. So to develop a bylaw, unless, we're tapping into other communities and seeing what if they have these centers, what they would maybe do differently, or the towns that have a bylaw, if there's something that, maybe we have AI write a bylaw for us, right? With a couple of month window, that's a pretty tight time window. Now, do we even consider like a 6-month moratorium and then extend it for another 6 months if we have to? Because we don't want to lose that window with a potential facility, right? Because to your point, we can, the revenue, like, we want to, we want to generate new tax revenue, we want to generate business. If we do a 1 or 2 year, we're going to lose a window.
Yeah.
I don't know.
That's part of why I wanna
Come up with something.
I think-
do what I've been saying.
The length of it, and then also, as Dave brought up, the definition of what the moratorium covers or is aimed at, right, needs a little bit more thought in terms of.
Yeah, I would point out that maybe 10 or so years ago, we put a 2-year moratorium on, I think it was recreational marijuana, adult use marijuana. We used that time to build a zoning bylaw for that, put it in place.
But there wasn't any other control there. There wasn't a special permit that would give us a buffer. That was, the state passed a law, and unless we do something, we're on luck.
Because part of what you're talking about is maybe just, if you don't think you can get it by fall town meeting, give yourself enough time to try to get to spring. Or, and then if you're not there, you extend it.
Right, we could extend it another 6 months.
So I think easily what we could do, easily, he said, things are never as easy as you think they're going to be. But take a closer look. Before I give up on the moratorium idea, I want to satisfy myself that it's adequately covered in the zoning bylaw, and I'm not yet sure about that.
Well, what's our exposure, right?
Yeah, so
with parcels, do we know that?
Yeah, how what could be done under the current bylaw that we might be uncomfortable with?
Right.
So that's where you want to, where you might decide that a temporary moratorium gives you more time to write things into the bylaw that we're confident will work. And on that part, writing things in the bylaw that we're confident would work, I think it would be helpful to draw on what other communities have done, and maybe even, in the best of all possible worlds, have already been shown to work. And I'm not sure we'd get that far. But.
So is our philosophy that we're not against this industry, right? Kind of like marijuana. We're not against the industry, but we want to carve out, we want to craft a bylaw so that if it is going to come to Grafton, it's in an appropriate.
Yeah, I think we want to make sure that if it comes to us sometime in the next year or two, we would like to be sure that it's going to be handled. We can handle it in a way that we're comfortable with.
Yeah, I'd agree with that. I mean, I think my thing is, I don't want to end up a situation where somebody comes in with a lot of resources and they're like, well, you didn't cover it in this way, so we kind of get to do what we want, right? And I'm not saying I know that, but I'm looking at it and saying, it doesn't really speak specifically to
The
it.
risk
so I
is
think,
real.
AI will find our holes.
Yeah, exactly.
Special permit is the key.
Ms.
Powers
Foley's
of
had
a
her,
special permit are the key.
Ms. Foley's had her hand up for a minute. If we could just take her question quick.
Yeah, not a question, just so much as a comment. It sounds to me like the planning board needs, more time to look at our current zoning, what we might need to beef up there. Do we need some sort of separate zoning verbiage or bylaw? And then, looking at a moratorium, again, they would also need time to create the language as to, the definition of what we're putting a moratorium on. So I guess I'm just trying to sort out like where this conversation is going. To me, it just sounds like the planning board fortunately is looking into this, and then the new planner brought some information, and it sounds like that board needs to create to meet on this and put it on your agenda, obviously, and see where we want to go forward.
Correct, but I think part of the purpose of tonight is to give this board an opportunity to share any concerns that we may have, from a town perspective, that they can consider as they have these discussions as well. So.
Yeah,
Okay,
please
so
do.
for me, I feel comfortable with the planning board proceeding as they see fit.
We're definitely not looking to come to, any sort of final determination or anything tonight. It's really just, group discussion.
I did see Ms. Duckworth's hand earlier. I don't know if she wanted to. I'll let her go before I speak if she wants to send it.
I appreciate that. I guess from my perspective, I would like to. There's enough unknowns, and to Mr. Chair's point, there's enough potential holes where someone might be able to come in without a moratorium and place a facility that the town of Grafton itself might not be comfortable with, but that we would have no remediation over. So we state that perhaps the air conditioning might not take additional water resources that we might not have, but the noise pollution at the facility might be so cumbersome. We have no bylaw today about noise restrictions in Grafton, right?
The state does.
But perhaps they get right in under that particular decibel level and the neighbors are uncomfortable with it and there's nothing to negotiate because we have, right, like these are just things that we don't know yet, and that's an example. I'd also state, again, from my perspective, that as I've said many times, I'm a big fan of open spaces. I'm a big fan of ensuring that Grafton maintains its balance of being a very green, environmentally conscious community, as well as a community that is open to businesses and increasing our economic development. But I see us increasing business and economic development as also really wanting to focus on bringing the kinds of businesses into town that also bring in a lot of employment, that give the opportunity for Graftonites and surrounding communities to come here and get jobs, not just big noisy boxes that are potentially hazardous in terms of the waste that they provide or create, that also are just monoliths that don't bring people or community or those sorts of benefits. That is just kind of my personal view, but I've also heard this sort of ad nauseum from a lot of the people that do speak to me about the ways that we want to see the town grow. So I personally would be very much so in favor of a moratorium for 6 months to 12 months to ensure where we might have holes that could leave us vulnerable for the community to be open to a facility like this coming in that could negatively impact both our community and our environment. That's my perspective.
So I was just going to add a few things. Number one, to Mr. Dauphini's point that we have several months until we need to have a bylaw ready for town meeting. Town meeting is in several months. We have probably just over a month to have a warrant article ready for presentation at for town meeting.
I said a couple of months,
Yeah.
which I meant was a short amount of
Yeah,
time, not a lot.
it's very, very short. Is kind of my point. The other thing is
Early on.
I'm not as confident that our special permit process today, even if every potential place for a data center would fall under special permit, would be enough to cover some of the current very real concerns that people that have data centers pop up in their neighborhoods face every day. The power strain, power costs go up because of delivery costs, among water access, even if they have self-sustaining water, some data centers do. Self-sustaining cooling systems that don't require outside water does exist. It's more expensive, but it does exist. So things like that, and then we have a gap in our current bylaws where right now a data center which only requires a few parking spots because there's no traffic, if it's large, it could require 100, 200, 300 parking spots. So there's a lot of impact on the actual amount of paved impervious space that would happen on a property. And if we can reduce that in number of parking in a bylaw, it could also attract them better because they don't have as much extra cost just to pave road they're not going to use, and they can make a bigger building in theory. So that would be a benefit to everyone. I'd also be interested in finding out would we be allowed by law or petition the state legislature to allow for community host agreements for data centers, like we had at one point for cannabis shops. So things like that could provide an outsized benefit to Grafton in and of itself. I think waiting to do nothing and waiting and not doing anything at town meeting in October and trying to have a bylaw that's suitable is not viable for me. I think doing a moratorium, like I said, to me, a minimum of 1 year moratorium. So I don't think we're going to have the answers we need for spring town meeting. We should still continue to work on it. I don't want to wait till next year to be working on this, but I think a year's minimum for a moratorium on this, assuming we can make that happen reasonably. There's a lot of things here.
There's a good point there that we require parking based on square feet in this case. And we may need a way to be allowed to reduce the parking a lot more than we currently are. Somebody wants to do this, though, we could have do it at a town meeting to make a change to allow it. Okay. Everybody doesn't know anywhere near enough, right? I'm a little, as I say, more sanguine because I'm an electrical engineer, I'm a computer engineer, I'm familiar with the planning board and the town government, and I've looked into it a good bit. I've looked at kilowatt hours and megawatt hours and so on, and I feel in our situation, what I've said, that I'm reasonably comfortable for now. If we need to, let's see, October, September, we only have well into August. We only have, a month and a
Roughly a month and a half, maybe a little
maybe
more.
month and a half to have an article nailed down. That's, if we need it, it's not like we're gonna spend the whole summer thinking about it and doing something in the middle of September. How many times have you heard me say, it's getting too late? We gotta start on this zoning now, and we should have started on it, 3 months ago.
Takes
Might have
time.
said that while you were on.
I'm sure you did, Bob. I'm sure you did.
So
Do you have something?
Mike's had his hand up for.
Oh, go ahead.
I just wanted to point out that our current zoning bylaw is not equipped to handle data centers either for or against. I think that when we do change the law, we need to be very careful. We would probably want to incorporate things like megawatts and million cubic feet of water, which are currently not parts of the zoning bylaw or things that we have domain over, to regulate this, because we don't want to regulate out, some small company needs a server farm for their own, medical healthcare records. I don't have any objection to that. We don't want, massive multi-acre, 20 megawatt facility going in. I don't think we have space for that, and I don't think we're in the right electrical ISO for that.
But look at what the state legislation that they're working on does. Does it on a statewide basis.
To your point, the
More,
graphic
more,
cable
more
studio could be
effectively
considered a
than
data center.
Exactly.
we can.
So, I believe that we should proceed as if the state regulations may never come to light.
We have one more comment here.
Yeah, just to wrap this up, I do feel like from hearing from everybody that there is a little bit between a moratorium or trying to get language put into place. I've never been as part of a moratorium before, but can the language be a moratorium for a year or until the planning board votes on such an item, whichever comes first?
Yeah, that I think is the customary approach.
Okay.
What we did.
So
with
we're
the-
not tied in and we have to wait for
we're
a
not
year.
tied in.
Right, okay.
I think what we did for the marijuana, and I don't remember if it was 1 or 2 years, but we set that up, and then when we were ready to go with the zoning, part of enacting that zoning was to repeal the moratorium.
Okay, perfect. So it's not like we're sewn into that
No,
time
not at
period,
all.
but it's a buffer that builds that's a safety, so that's good.
Right. So the only limit on a moratorium is you can't do it for more than, I think, 2 years. The AG will not approve a moratorium longer than 2 years. And we don't have to go with a full 2 years, but I think what we can do between now and toward the end of August, which is where we have to fish or cut bait on a fall town meeting warrant article, is between now and mid-August, the board ought to be able to satisfy itself that either, one, we basically don't need to do anything at all in zoning, that we're adequately covered, or two, there's a couple of minor tweaks to zoning and we're covered. 3, it's going to take more work to really fit this into zoning, so we propose a moratorium. But we have until the middle of August to decide whether to put something on town meeting in the fall and what to put on town meeting in the fall. And I think we probably have, between our previous discussion and what we discussed tonight, we've got, I think, a lot of food for thought, a lot of work, a lot of things to chew on. It seems like we ought to be able to make that much of a decision by mid-August. And I think it's helpful. It's helpful for us to know. And you mentioned this earlier, and it's for us to get a better idea from you guys as to if you have what your concerns are first of all, and any sense you might have of a preferred direction. But I think ultimately, between now and mid-August, it's we should be able to decide what, if anything, we put on town meeting for the fall, and beyond that, what other work needs to be done later.
I think I'll take as a discrete next step for us, and I think we've got some space in the next meeting, is to work on the definition of what actually is kind of above the line of concern, right? What needs special attention? So maybe that's the first thing we should work on, and then once we've defined that, we'd say, all right, does that influence a change or some other action?
That's the next planning board meeting. I'd
Yes.
say let's do what Dave said and move on and declare victory.
So moved.
Yeah, I think you guys clearly have a plan of attack for how you're already into your discussions. I think we all seem to be aligned on the direction in which you're heading. We would definitely take your recommendation as to whether as Dave said, come mid-August, you guys decide we want to implement a moratorium and how long that is, whatever that may be. But just you definitely increase the comfort level here and with residents, that this is a topic that, you know, is top of mind and we're taking action on. You know, for my last little bit of feedback, in the zoning articles, that the examples that we were given, I did appreciate some of the things that were touched on tonight, like the setbacks, the screening, and, you know, my general concern is also the draw on resources, you know, electricity and water in particular. So you guys, you know, definitely have that top of mind. So, you know, I feel more comfortable. I don't speak for the rest of the board, but.
So,
Definitely.
maybe, individuals who have, you know, send an individual, send us their concerns, because you have different ones. We can be looking at those.
Sure.
Let me just make one observation, that with all the publicity about data centers floating around, the image I think the public generally has of data centers are what's often called the hyperscale data centers. You know, like the one I read about the other day, the data center all by itself is big enough to, you know, cover about half or 2/3 of the island of Manhattan.
The Death Star data
So,
center. Yeah.
so, yeah, and frankly, that's the scale of data center I think we are least likely to have to deal with here in Grafton, just from the point of view of the lack of availability of land. But, you know, there are, you know, smaller scale data centers where it becomes more interesting, more likely to, you know, come to us in Grafton, but also likely to have less of an impact than these hyperscale data centers do. So it helps to keep in mind the different sizes. And you alluded to this, Mike, too. That, you know, it helps to keep in mind, you know, sort of categorize the data centers in different elements of scale, however you want to measure it. The stuff I've read measures it in megawatts of power consumption, which may or may not be the best measurement from our point of view, but it's something to think about. But yeah, just to point out that, you know, data centers come in many different sizes.
There are many who are great neighbors. There are a few who are terrible neighbors.
Yeah.
Like anything else.
Right. Yeah. And there's also only so much land that Grafton has left that is commercially viable and on routes that make sense for it to be a commercial or business. And we do just want to think about the sorts of businesses and, you know, the way we want to build our community and what we want to prioritize, right?
Yeah.
Is economic development at all interested in this?
Let's start with
Should
planning
be.
board first.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it hasn't been on our agenda to my knowledge, so, but we should be, you know, I mean,
'Cause
it
that's,
should be something that.
I'm really
Yeah.
interested in an
Yeah.
analysis of the economics to the town. You know, just
Right.
having just done the override, we have a lot of attention about that,
Right.
and that
Well, the infrastructure inside these facilities, of the value of those, you know, has to be pretty high.
Well,
So I would think the
it's,
tax revenue would be significant.
and personal property tax for that.
Right.
But the value goes down quickly.
They amortize quickly.
Of computers.
Yeah.
And I've heard that some of these places just walk away when their computer, you know, it's cheaper to go build a new building than it is to change out everything for the next round of technology.
Again, you know, that was something that Shrewsbury put in their specific bylaw was
bonding
the
or-
decommissioning and abandonment.
Right,
You know, so
right.
Because
We have that on,
Yeah.
we try to have that on solar.
Some of the reasons here.
Okay, are we,
Well, again, thank you all for coming in tonight for both topics. You know, appreciate all your insight on this. If any of the select board members have any additional concerns or anything they want to reach out to you about, they will do so. And yeah, thank you.
Great.
Right.
All right.
I move the
hearing none,
planning board adjourn.
Go ahead.
Second.
Any discussion on the motion? Hearing none. All in favor?
Aye.
it's not debatable.
Thanks, everyone. Yeah, not debatable.
Yeah, if there's anything we can do, you know what I mean, resource wise, or like even discussions, I mean, I think this is important.
Let me and everybody know the particular questions, because, for example, people are concerned about the power or the water. We can talk, you know, there are answers about those. Okay.
Thanks,
Thank you.
guys.
Thank you.
Have a good night. Okay, next up, we're going to review mobility management and the elimination of routes A and B with the WRTA.
I do have a laptop here, so that should share my screen from here.
Sure.
I think I have to be let into the meeting to do that.
Yeah, we'll have to grant you the permission, but you know,
Thank
you can,
you.
yeah, podium, desk, wherever you want to be. It's totally up to you.
I'll take the desk if that's okay.
What is your name?
I'm sorry.
What is your name?
Josh. It might be under Tom Coyne as well. That's our. There we go. Thank you. Just sent a request to share if I could.
Yep, just accepted it.
Thank you. Good evening.
Evening. Welcome.
So this is introductions. I'm Josh Rickman. I'm the administrator for the Worcester Regional Transit Authority. Joining me here tonight is Robert Spain, who is our vice chair for the WRTA Advisory Board, as well as Nick Burnham, who is our director of operations and planning. Just thank you for having us here tonight. So we do have about 22 slides. Should take me less than 22 minutes, I promise. Go through basically the background of the routes A and B which operate here in town, some costs and changes of those services, do a review of the study we've been conducting since December, the reason of the study, a timeline, some onboard observations, the Grafton COE review, talk about some alternative service approaches identified through the study, and then follow up with some summary, then open up for questions. So a little bit of background on routes A and B. So routes A and B operate on weekdays in Northbridge and Grafton. The service was introduced in 2013, and the service was initiated by flexing MBTA community assessment funds to fully fund the operations. Basically back then, then Governor Deval Patrick put some legislation in to allow basically communities to flex the MBTA community assessment funds to be spent locally by the RTA. The service basically operates where it can deviate up to 3/4 of a mile off of the route. So you see here Route A in the red dashed line and Route B in the blue dashed line. So basically 3/4 mile off that route, an individual can request to be picked up, basically flex it on and off the route by making a reservation the day before. The buses do operate as flag stops, and this is something that's not unique to routes A and B. It's a system we use across the service area. We do have physical bus stop signs in the city of Worcester, but beyond there, we largely use flag stops. And a flag stop is when someone walks up basically to the corridor, they put their hand up and the bus will pull over, pick up the passenger, when on board, the individual says where they want to get off, and the driver will stop safely where they can. A little more detail on Route A, and again, this is the red dashed line you see here. That operates between 9 a.m. and 5 p.m. between Northbridge and Millbury via Grafton. And it operates for 7.6 revenue hours. And basically, revenue hour is how many hours is available to the public, or what's on the public-facing timetable or schedule. So basically, 9 to 5. It does operate closed door in Sutton and Millbury, basically saying it doesn't operate service in those towns, except for its connection at the Blackstone Valley shops, where it can connect to our fixed route, WRTA Route 4. This route serves approximately 12 riders per day, so it's about 1.6 riders per revenue hour. Route B operates on weekdays from 5:20 a.m. to 7:35 p.m. between Northbridge and Grafton. A little bit more service on this one, 12.9 revenue hours per day. The one early trip and an all trip through 5:15 do operate closed door between Northbridge, New Village, and Grafton. And because a little bit larger span of service, there's a little bit more ridership on that one of 22 riders per day at 1.7 riders per revenue hour. So I keep using that term, riders per revenue hour, and that's the metric we use in transit. And typically speaking, it's the way we measure how effective or efficient a route is. So you see here in the graph is all of the WRTA services that we operate. And on average, we operate about 27.4 passenger revenue hour. So seeing 1.5, 1.7 is rather low in terms of productivity. To be fair, we don't expect a route like Route A or Route B to compete against a route that's operating just all in the city of Worcester. It's just the built environment's dramatically different. However, I would say that 2 passenger revenue hour is what we usually assess to our demand response services like the Grafton COA service. That's something that you see about 2 passenger revenue hour. And since we're below that on a shuttle route, that certainly does raise, a red flag to us internally. There have been some, beyond the low productivity, the study is also informed due to increased costs. WRTA's fixed route contractors cost increased considerably as they entered a new agreement with their workforce on September 1st of 2025. For slightly more background, the enabling legislation for the WRTA is Chapter 161B, which requires...
No, I'm just... Motion, I'm sorry.
That's okay.
It's a private joke.
Basically under Chapter 161B. So basically that requires us to contract out all of our rubber tire services, whether it's a bus, a van, we can't be the ones that operate the service. So they employ the mechanics, the drivers, and other staff. So you see right here on the sheet to the right, the cherry sheet assessment. And municipal assessments reflected on the cherry sheet are usually based on data from basically 2 years in arrears. So at the conclusion of each state fiscal year on June 30, the WRTA completes its annual reporting using actual operating statistics, including service miles, passenger trips, and operating costs. So for example, the FY27 assessment is based on actual FY25 costs. So we're about 2 years removed in terms of the overall process. So, as the cost increased during fiscal year 26, those costs were absorbed via existing budget, so there's not something for the town to be concerned about FY26 assessments. However, for FY27, that is kind of why we're here today, because we are seeing these increased costs. There's no really additional funding in the MBTA assessment, which was intended to fully fund the services, and there's just not a lot of productivity of these routes. So just jumping into the study overview, basically we're doing this because the ridership hasn't been very strong. It's been out there for 13 years. The costs are going up. We want to come to the community and talk about, how we can kind of make some adjustments prior to any cherry sheet impacts. And the combination of low ridership and higher costs makes the continuation of these shuttles unsustainable. So we did task our on-call planning consultant, Nelson Nygaard, to basically assess all the transportation services in Grafton and Northbridge routes A and B, the COA program, volunteer bus driver programs, identify any type of other alternatives, and align those resources with the community needs. So in terms of study timeline, we kicked this off in December of 2025, some initial coordination, kind of seeing the impacts of the new CBA with our fixed route contractor. The scope of work and kickoff meeting was provided to the towns. We did a project launch in February, updated the website, we did field work, we put flyers on board all the vehicles where we had comments back to the WRTA. In February and March, we did some more data analysis, identified alternatives, went back to the towns in April and May. At our May advisory meeting with WRTA, we did receive approval of public meetings. We hosted public meetings in June of 2026. In July 1st, we did meet back with the town. We're here today, and on July 16th, there might be action items taken by the WRTA Advisory Board relating to the service. In terms of the field observations that we saw, it really fell in line with what we've seen historically. So Route A, about 12 passengers were observed on board those vehicles, and as you can see in the map, largely the ridership was concentrated well within Northbridge. On Route B, we did see 24 riders, and again, ridership north of the Shaws in Northbridge was relatively low. So most of the trips were very much concentrated well within the town of Northbridge. In terms of the Grafton COA, and I'm sure town staff do a better job presenting this than I can, but service for its residents were 60 plus or with documented disability. So basically the town has one town-owned van and they have one hybrid minivan. They also have access to one WRTA-owned and maintained van. The town has 3 part-time drivers and 1 full-time transportation coordinator. The service operates 9 a.m. to 3 p.m. and serves out-of-time medical on different days. Reservations are required 48 hours in advance. Ridership in 2025 was 7,200 passengers total, and the WRTA van provided about 3,100 passengers, or 43% of the ridership. The current contract between WRTA and the town is for $44,000, and about 75%, 80% of that cost comes from state contract assistance. In terms of the alternative service approaches that were identified in the study, the first was to operate reduced WRTA shuttle in Northbridge and eliminate the Grafton service. And the main reason for this was just ridership on the A and B experienced demonstrated growth and need in Northbridge over 13 years, while ridership really hasn't developed in Grafton over that time. So while this is Northbridge, let's give you a quick overview of what this would look like. It would basically a single route in Northbridge with no service to Grafton. We'd be applying all the MBTA assessments towards that service that Northbridge has access to. It would operate a reduced schedule of 4 days a week at 6 hours per day. Main benefit is it targets where the ridership is today. The drawbacks are certainly it's not as robust of a schedule. There's certainly cost escalation concerns, and there's no connection to Grafton MBTA station or the WRTA network. The other alternative identified was to potentially implement WRTA's mobility management model to Grafton and Northbridge COA services. The reason we identified this one is largely to provide additional financial support for service to seniors and individuals with disabilities that have demonstrated a strong need for the service. So the Grafton COA again provided 7,200 passenger trips in FY25, and that's 2.5 times more ridership than the individuals that use the Grafton shuttle buses. So in this situation, the program basically is WRTA assumes responsibility for all of the paratransit trips, reservations, scheduling, dispatch, and we own and maintain the fleet of the vehicles. The town would hire and compensate the drivers, the wages and fringe, cover fuel, and obtain vehicle insurance. And then the vehicle would largely service residents in town and provide out-of-town medical like they do today. The benefits to the town is that the town's financial contribution to the COA transportation budget would lower dramatically as WRTA reimburses the town for wages, fuel, and insurance. There'd be no vehicle maintenance or need to handle reservations and scheduling, and customers, again, can travel regularly to medical appointments in Worcester. Some of the drawbacks we certainly heard from the new COA director as well as other town staff is that this does remove the trip reservation process from COA staff. And oftentimes, that's a way that COA staff can check in and talk to seniors, those with disabilities, almost like a health check. It's a way to talk to those that have come to the senior center. And losing that is certainly a concern, and we've heard that from other communities that have joined the mobility management model. Certainly, there's some concern about how the trips are handled. Let's say an example that Northbridge and Grafton both joined the model, and there was a Northbridge and a Grafton resident at the UMass Medical Center in Worcester. Well, the Northbridge van very well could take that Grafton resident home because it's kind of making the service more efficient and more accessible and lowering costs. But for some, that might be a challenge as they might know all the drivers and they have a relationship with the drivers. So we've heard that feedback as well. And lastly, it's limited customers with disabilities and or those that are 60 plus years old. So in summary, routes A and B are the lowest performing routes in WRTA. The cost of these routes are doubling and will increase by 5% more per year. Due to low performance and cost increases, we initiated the study to kind of be proactive instead of reactive to everything. The options on the table were that limited fixed route service in Northbridge or to initiate the mobility management model, and we do have a potential vote at the discretion of the advisory board on July 16th. And before I turn over to questions, if the WRTA advisory board would vote to eliminate routes A and B, that would be no impact to the Grafton COA contract with WRTA. That would have no impact to it. And the assessment that Grafton initially pays today would not necessarily decrease. Basically, those funds would revert back to the MBTA portion of the cherry sheet, which would be seen in the fiscal year of 2029, as it's 2 years in arrears. And with that, I'm happy to answer any questions.
Okay. Questions, comments, concerns?
Is there anything that this board can do to influence the decision of the WRTA, or is this exercise really just a nice letting us know what's going on?
Sure. So the town of Grafton certainly has a vote on the WRTA advisory board, and that's one way that which they can advocate for the service they need. They can discuss. Service decisions are not made by WRTA administration. Decisions are made by the WRTA board themselves. So service decisions, public meetings, all that stuff is outside of WRTA administration's hands. But certainly we have a responsibility to kind of look at services holistically. We have a lot of needs across our 37 member communities, and we just haven't seen a strong response to this in the 13 years it's been operating. So that's kind of why we're here before I came to you guys in 2029 with why it was so expensive.
Yeah, fair.
How long until we can apply to restore those routes? We do have some growth coming in some of those areas on the route. If you guys vote to remove them, is there a time period before we can request to restore them?
No, you can always make the request to put back in services, maybe services that are more aligned with what those needs actually are. Certainly had some conversations with the new town planner about some of those identified projects that are coming on board, and maybe different service models that could solve that. So certainly it's a conversation we could have. The MBTA assessment funds are for new services, so if there's a new thing, a new need, that is something that we could certainly talk about leveraging.
Could you back to the that shortfall? Because I had a copy of the June 15th version of this deck, I think, and those shortfall numbers were much different in mid-June, or at least in this copy. It had Grafton shortfall, based on operating costs of 108,370 at 6,467, whereas that one has it as 123,000.
Sure. So that was the FY25 costs. That's kind of what we were comparing. This is FY27. So it's more reflective of the new CBA that our third-party contractor has. So that's the difference between those two.
Mr. Chair, Ms. Foley does have her hand up. I don't think you can see it on the screen.
Yeah, we can. Yep, Ms. Foley.
Hi there. While I appreciate the very low ridership numbers, I mean, that's pretty compelling and hard to argue. I guess I'll just comment that, and I appreciate you went through some ways that you guys tried to market including putting flyers on the buses that people weren't riding on anyways. But I guess my comment, having lived here for a long time and certainly through the whole duration that you've been operating the service, is that there are very few people, I believe, in our town that are aware of this. I've just kind of been putting feelers out, and I guess my comment would just be in terms of marketing this route and how it works with the flag only and whatnot. I just think that we perhaps we or WRTA did a disservice in terms of letting folks know that this is available. I know that the senior center and various a couple of other sites that I am on, like on Facebook, where folks are desperate for a ride, almost on that route, and we're not aware of this occurring. So just some feedback. Again, I understand the numbers, compelling in terms of the low ridership, but I'm not sure if the effort was effective in terms of letting folks know that this was available.
Yeah, and piggybacking off that, I know you said this is at the discretion of your board. I generally felt like, even seeing some of the dates here, that the outreach sessions weren't terribly well published or public knowledge. I know locally there was one person who posted about it in one of the major Facebook groups on town. I think it was 1 to 2 days before they were set to occur. It didn't seem like anybody was terribly aware that this was coming. I know outreach like that can be difficult in helping to schedule, but from our perspective, I think it felt like a bit of a shock, and I think I'm in a similar boat. I don't think it's necessarily a service that the town can afford to continue to fund, to make up that delta, but it also, in an ideal scenario, it hurts, because I'm sure that the few riders that you do have, really rely on the service. So, I think we're all just kind of rocking a hard place here, and yeah.
No, if I could,
Sure.
Certainly the last thing I want to do as a transit professional is cut service. This isn't what I do. This is what I aspire to do as a transit professional. That's not why I got into this as my career. And as you said, this is a service that people depend upon, and I very much appreciate the challenge that might impose on some individuals. And
Mr. Chair, if I might. Sure. I'm Bob Spain. I'm from Millbury. I'm the Vice Chair of the Worcester Regional Transit Authority. The hardest thing we do is allocate our resources, no different than towns. I mean, I was town manager in Millbury, so I fully know his problem, and your problem, of course. So the hardest thing is we have so few resources and so many. The problem is Worcester takes up, I don't think it's going to shock anybody, Worcester takes up the vast majority of our resources. Worcester also has almost 50% of the voting rights of the Worcester Regional Transit Authority. So it's a kind of a uphill fight. Several years ago, this same problem came to Millbury, and we ended up losing some of our service because of it, because of the lines. And I was on the board at the time, so try explaining that one to your, and I was the town manager, try explaining that one. But anyway, I'm saying, we'd love to continue more. We'd like to increase service. And the point about the advertising was well taken, but again, we don't have that large an advertising budget. We try to utilize those funds as best we can. And the board takes all this stuff very seriously. We look at we have disabled people that are represented on the board. There's seats that are specifically for them. One of our board Auburn members is a blind individual, hearing sight impaired. He forever keeps us on that route there. So we do look at this stuff and look at it long and hard. We don't make decisions lightly. We'd love to increase every town's routes, but we got to be practical and we got to be rational, and that's why it is. And I am absolutely a voting member, so one way or the other, I'm one of the good or bad guys, depending on how you look at it. So
we know that it's an incredibly difficult position that you're in here, and I think everybody here understands it. And it just it is what it is at this point. We do understand that it's a business. And that in an ideal world, it wouldn't be going away, but,
It's even harder now that we've gone to a non-fare operation where we don't charge fares. That tends to sometimes boost up ridership, in which case they want more service. Well, we don't have any more money. We're trying to fund that, and it's a square corner. Airplanes can't go around square corners, so we're kind of round corners. So that's in the future, though. But it's going to get worse before it gets better. And I hopefully we'll still be able to figure out how to do it. And the legislature has stepped up to the plate a little bit and provided some more funds, which I was mildly surprised that they did that. It's good, it is a great thing. It is a good, but. Again, most of the fares, most of the riderships in Worcester, and most of the votes are in Worcester. They're one person. Say, okay, I vote 48%. What do you got? And that's across 37 towns. There's probably 15 or 20 towns in the city that show up at any one time. So not only can we, it almost takes all the towns to come and vote to vote something that might be in favor of the towns versus not the cities. So
no, I appreciate that, further explanation and totally agree. And I think you pointed to another good lever there, that if this is something that is that important to us, we can attempt to put pressure on our legislatures as well.
Sure.
For increased funding to return the service.
Exactly.
And go after it that way.
So we do appreciate the opportunity to come before it. Anytime the board has questions, Josh would be glad to come, and myself, I just live in Millbury, so it's not that far away to come. I'd be glad to come anytime.
Thank you.
Any additional questions, comments?
Just one more about the public outreach meetings. Did you guys offer rides to those riders to get to the public outreach meeting?
We always put our public meetings along during service hours and along public accessible locations. We also had a virtual meeting as well.
Okay, awesome. Thank you.
And if I could just share one other thing, if there is interest or future interest in the mobility management model, we're always open for that future conversation. That's not something that, necessarily is needed to make today, but if that's more of an interest, happy to come back and have more conversations about that.
Perfect. Thank you.
Appreciate that. Thank you. And thank you all for, coming in tonight. It was an informative presentation. I appreciate you, waiting patiently through all the agenda items that came before you. I know it took a few minutes, but
Poll petition's my favorite.
Me too.
okay. That would be good. Everybody's good. I think you guys can
Thank
call
you
it
so
a night.
much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Josh.
Thank you again. Okay. So next up, we have create a list of earmarks for federal funding / grant funding. When Congressman McGovern was here, I don't know, a month and a half ago at this point. We had the opportunity to talk with him briefly afterwards, and he made the suggestion that we, come up with a list of potential earmarks, things that he could help Grafton with specifically. So this was something we agreed, we felt would be a great topic of discussion for the board, and something that we should definitely try to take advantage of. I don't know if, again, this is the first part of the discussion. If people brought ideas with them tonight, I brought a few that, we can kind of bandy about, but I'll just, I guess, open it up for general discussion at this point, and
I have an idea.
sure.
I would love to get an earmark for sidewalks. We've had a lot of residents reach out. We even had a big discussion at town meeting. Sidewalks are expensive, so if we get some federal money to pay for sidewalks, that would be awesome.
I think that's a viable thing to ask for. My kind of approach in this is or my line of thinking anyways was, we also have to essentially get the congressman to buy into it, and it's got to be something that he feels is worth promoting, and he's going to get a little play out of it too. So, I think that fits in there. He did that night talk a lot about, infrastructure needs, things like affordable housing, clean water, stuff like that. So just throwing those out as some other thought starters. Ms. Foley?
Yeah, so for those of us that were not in the room, I didn't know that he was in town or that we were meeting with him or whoever it was. So maybe can you give us a little bit more, or me, a little bit more background and where you got to this with him and who met with him, etc.?
Sure. I believe it was Grafton Indivisible inviting him for a speaking engagement at the library. They put out some notifications and sign up forms. It was I'm not sure what the capacity is on the that conference room at the library, but it was fully open. It was well attended.
Across multiple towns too. I think
Yep.
residents from Upton and his whoever he was covering kind of thing.
Yep. Just kind of seemed to be a stop on the tour. He gave some updates as to, some of the legislation that he's pursuing and some of his priorities for the future. That was basically it. We were able to, I say we, I was there, Miss Roy was able to attend, Miss Duckworth attended. We were able to get his ear for a minute afterwards just to, again, thank him for coming, and, note that a lot of the things that he talked about were problems that we see locally in Grafton as well. And that was when he made the suggestion that we try and come up with a list of things he could help the town with.
Okay, so 3 board members were in attendance and you guys spoke with him afterwards?
Briefly, yes.
Great.
So, some of the things I was thinking of as well, I like the sidewalks idea. This isn't specific to, the town of Grafton, but I think if we could pursue any additional funding for the water treatment facilities, or perhaps maybe some general water infrastructure updates for some of our more problematic areas where, the pipes are older, we have, consistent water main breaks, things like that, would, again, not town specific, but would benefit the residents greatly. It's something we could discuss with the water district. Maybe focusing on some of the higher cost road incorporations that we're facing. Some of the newer roads that we've taken over the last several years, Faulkner, Juncus Terrace, things like that, things that are engineering intensive, and then, we're reworking easements and things like that. School roofing projects potentially to, I know we've discussed pursuing state grants, but if we could get some federal funding for that as well and reduce the cost there. we have a couple of these topics coming up, but invasives in general, are something we deal with, primarily aquatic, but I don't think there's any reason why we couldn't focus some of that on terrestrial. And this is admittedly a little premature, but in the coming weeks, Evan will be discussing with us. He's working through some general traffic safety ideas. I think there could potentially be some things involved in that we may wish to seek some funding for. I don't know if that sparked any additional ideas with anybody, or and again, we certainly don't have to. This isn't something we have to wrap tonight. There's plenty of time for people to continue to think and brainstorm on this. But those were some of the directions I was thinking initially. So.
I like the idea of sort of striking while the iron is hot, and from sort of the list that both you and Colleen have spoken through, to stick out to me as large projects that we already have prioritized, quantified, scored lists for, and that's municipal roofs, not just schools, but the whole roof inventory.
Totally. Yeah.
And sidewalks, because we've done surveying about who wants sidewalks and where, correct? And sort of have that sort of prioritized. And so I think that if we are going to go to the congressman with any particular ask, having as much data and as quantified as possible is going to be the most impactful and the easiest thing to say yes to, not only because there'll be a specific dollar amount, but because it'll be easiest for his office to point and say, look at how put together we all are as a collective. So my first reaction is to go in those directions. Number one, obviously the town has prioritized them enough to put in those resources to make those lists and to quantify them and do studies in the first place. And second of all, they're going to be the easiest to probably justify for both ourselves and him, because he's going to have to do some of that legwork to get the earmark in as well.
Yep. And just clarifying, make sure we're all on the same page. When he said list, I did expect that we would send him several options. It would be his choice, which he feels are the strongest or the most likely to move forward with. I do want to gently push for the water treatment facilities. I know if an earmark were say $1 million, that's kind of a drop in the bucket. When we're talking about multi-million-dollar facilities that need to be built. But I would love to see anything we could do to reduce the burden on the residents who rely on the water districts and clean drinking water at this point. I think that's a pretty noble cause. I know we're not talking about like heavy pollutants, heavy metals, that types of things. It's naturally occurring, but I think that's one of our more important topics in town. So I personally want to push for that a little bit. But as long as the rest of the boards, I'm just making my case.
No, it's a very, very fair point, and I don't disagree with it at all. And you're right. Sorry, I kind of fixated on the two things that, from a town perspective, we've sort of quantified. But you're right. That's also very easily defensible and quantifiable. I do sort of want to push back on the idea of offering options, though. Right? I think about, if I'm at my day job and I'm presenting a business case to my executive leadership team, I'm not really giving them options. I have a very strong business case for something that I don't want them to yay or nay or have to hem and haw or come back to me with, like, this is the thing, right? So I would advocate for us making the decision as a board as to which thing we wanted to present in full.
Okay.
I'm not the chair.
Can I build off that?
Sure.
To that point, what is everybody's feeling about taking a list and doing like a survey monkey for the town, like when rec does surveys, and then see what the town finds to be the most attractive one, and go from there. Like the select board comes up with a list, which we're well on our way, and then we push it out for a couple weeks, let people give us feedback, and then everybody has a little skin in the game, and it's we've gotten some public input, and it's an earmark, so it's not guaranteed at all anyway, but it's at least getting everybody involved.
Love it.
Yeah, or even like an outreach session where we just, a listening session, I guess.
Yep.
Would be more accurate, where residents can come in and share opinions.
Those surveys, though, everybody like those get good responses. So
Yeah, they're easy and fast.
yep.
Okay.
Sorry, William.
Anne Marie, you have your hand
No
up?
problem.
Yeah, I guess, Andy, you mentioned like just so we're all on the same page. I don't feel that I'm on the same page, given that 3 select board members attended a meeting or an open forum with James McGovern and discussed town business, and now are kind of deliberating on some ideas, or I'm not sure what you might have talked about or deliberated on that evening. So I'm not ready to contribute much, given that I don't really know kind of where we're going with this. But I have some concerns about what occurred and how this came on our agenda.
Okay. I don't love the implication there, but, and I guess I would say if you had questions about an agenda item, you can reach out beforehand and seek some sort of clarification on that. So, we could have had a conversation
I didn't have any
tonight, but
questions
that's-
until this evening, until I heard you guys speak. It was clear, I guess, what I thought we were talking about, but
Well,
I have
then what did you
questions
think we
in
would be
real time.
talking about tonight, to that point?
The agenda item is create a list of earmarks for federal funding / grant funding, which, comes a bit out of the blue, but I figured there's some sort of discussion in terms of, as a board, that we might want to collaborate on this and present something. Again, 3 board members were at a function and had discussions with McGovern, and if I guess I'm just going to leave it there.
No, I'm sorry.
If you don't
I think you're
understand
hung
where I'm
up
coming
on
from,
the
then you
wrong
don't
part of
understand.
this. I
I
mean,
think anything I say is, if you don't get it, you don't get it.
No,
in my
but what-
opinion. So yeah.
what you're asking, the idea
I'm not
that we
asking
would,
anything.
that we,
I'm
excuse
simply
me.
stating my fact. and how
Okay,
I-
fine. What you've
my impression.
stated is that we would brainstorm some ideas for some federal funding, and that's exactly what we're trying to do tonight. The how we got to this point, you agree or disagree, that's fine. But the focus of the discussion has not changed.
Can I just add, just to alleviate, it sounds like you have some concerns. It was a public forum, like you indicated, multiple towns were invited, and at the end, while we were putting chairs away, there was kind of just like a photo opportunity, and the discussion lasted probably 3 minutes. It wasn't anything that went into great detail. It was just, we were all, talking about the things he was mentioning, and like Andy said, the similarities we see here in Grafton, and again, like a 3-minute conversation, and he suggested coming up with a list of earmarks, and it was as innocent as that. It wasn't a sit down with McGovern that you weren't invited to. It was a public forum anyone could have attended, and we took the opportunity to do so.
Well, anyone could have attended if they knew about it. It was on a Facebook group, I guess, in town. But yeah,
That's correct.
So-
definitely concerns about it. About
Is there anything else anybody would like to discuss tonight on this? Or are we just keen to continue to think about it, and we will circle back at a future meeting and come up with a list that we can then, either discuss or send out a survey and whittle it down?
Yep, I would like to bring it back and then push out a survey and an outreach meeting. An outreach meeting might feel like a little overkill, but a survey seems like to get some good feedback from the community on what they would like to see, how prioritize it for us, and then send, one good option over based off that.
I have one comment. One of the things I think we should focus on is our waterways, our lakes, streams. We got Fisherville Pond that's overgrown, with not lily pads, but whatever they call
Water
them.
chestnuts?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And water chestnuts, and we have, every lake it seems in town has issues with vegetation growth. And there's a lot of causes for that, but I think that's something, and even dams, right? Where there was years ago there was a regulation that was passed by the state we had to have our dams inspected, and if we had to get, you know, and it was mandatory, if you didn't, they fined you. It was another, you know, unfunded mandate from the state of Massachusetts, and we had to do some dam repairs and had to take it out of our own pocket. So they make you inspect them, and if, of course, engineers are gonna find problems, and then we had to fund it or the state would fine us. So I would throw dams in there, but lakes and streams and, you know, even, the pond off of East Street, you know, a lot of these have a lot of overgrown. So I think that would be something that may resonate with our federal government.
It's a dam
Yeah,
there too.
that's what I was thinking with
So
the,
sidewalks are great, but, you know, that's, you know, we definitely have heard that cry for more sidewalks. It's a long process because you gotta do land takings for every homeowner along that property, so it's a long process.
And they're expensive, so it just never gets done.
Yeah, it takes years. So I think the waterway might resonate, so I would ask you to put that on there.
I like that a lot.
yeah, that's, that was what I was thinking with the invasives, because Senator Moore typically gets us an earmark, you know, that covers some of the costs of that remediation, but we've talked about it here. It's 12 years, 7 years. I'm forgetting the number that you have to do water chestnuts. Yeah,
12 years.
they have that 12-year incubation period, so you have to do it every year for 12 years in order to make a dent in that problem. You know, so yeah, securing some additional funding for that, you know, and whatever we can do, I agree. I think it's a worthwhile.
Yeah, and then we got problems there. We don't really talk about it much, but they're there.
Yeah.
You know.
The pictures and correspondence for this packet even.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
It
Pretty,
looks like you could walk
dramatic,
across.
yeah.
Yeah. Okay, great. We're gonna pass over allocating funds for the school roof project tonight and move to establishing a Grafton Common Traffic Study Committee. This was something that we had discussed a little while back following the results of the grant study that was done on traffic around the common. We talked about bringing this. I think we talked about it earlier in the year and decided we'd bring the idea back after budget season and come up with a charge and start exploring the idea of Common Traffic Study Committee. So, Evan, do you want to speak to that a little bit, or is that pretty well summarize it?
Pretty well summarized it. We put together a draft charge. The basics of the draft charge are it's a 5 voting member committee, 1 member of the select board, 1 member of the planning board, 3 members at large with relevant experience as appointed by the select board, 2 ex officio non-voting members, much to my chagrin, me and the director of planning, which will be Christian. So review the mission and general goals are review the traffic study, right? Obviously, analyze the recommendations, and then put in place kind of the priorities for implementing those strategies and recommendations from the study. Hold at least 2 public hearings prior to submitting the final report to the select board, and then include public comment sections on each agenda to allow residents to provide input, which is generally what we do, and then present back to the select board.
Looks good.
Great. I like the charge. I like the 5 members. I think you can get something done with that. Be great to have the police chief there, even as a invited guest for his input for some of the meetings. I guess for me, you know, I live down the street. I spend a lot of time up there. I know the traffic patterns, and you know, I'd be willing to, other than EDC, I don't have a lot, so I'd be willing to serve on the committee. It's a lot. It's a good project, and it's the traffic up there is only going to increase. So it's good that we're doing this.
Yeah, I agree. I thought I think the charge is clear and well written. I'm honestly excited to see what that final report will entail and what the findings will be. So
I think there's some potential up there too, not just on the, we know the busy part of the common, but even on the other side of the common, there's I think there's some potential for real improvements on that side. There's a lot of pavement over there, a lot of unnecessary pavement, and I think we can pick up some green space, some parking on that side. We don't think about that side too much because it doesn't see as much traffic, but there's definitely some potential for improvement there.
Agreed. Okay, does anybody have any any issues with the charges as written, or do we feel like we're ready to adopt it and get this thing moving?
Ready to adopt.
All right, I move the board vote to approve and sign the Grafton Common Traffic Study Committee charge as presented.
Second.
Okay, motion made and seconded. Any discussion? Hearing none. Ms. Roy?
Aye.
Mr. Dauphiné?
Dauphiné, aye.
Ms. Duckworth?
Aye.
Ms. Foley?
Fully aye.
Jefferson, aye. Okay, motion passed unanimously.
Do we want to appoint our select board member now, or wait till we do that at a later date?
I'm comfortable with that.
Okay, I move the board vote to appoint Craig Dauphiné as the select board representative to the newly created Grafton Common Traffic Study Committee.
Second.
Okay, motion made and seconded. Any discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor? Ms. Roy?
Aye.
Mr. Dauphiné?
Dauphiné, aye.
Okay, Ms. Duckworth?
Aye.
Ms. Foley?
Fully aye.
Jefferson, aye. Thank you for stepping up for that.
Great, thank you.
Next on the agenda tonight, we have the collective bargaining agreement with the Grafton Public Library Union. This was reviewed and voted on in executive session, so now we can take the vote to approve and sign the agreement.
I move the board vote to approve and sign the collective bargaining agreement with the Grafton Public Library Union as presented.
Second.
Okay, motion made and seconded. Any additional discussion? Hearing none. Ms. Roy?
Aye.
Mr. Dauphiné?
Dauphiné, no.
Ms. Duckworth?
Aye.
Ms. Foley?
Fully aye.
Jefferson, aye. Motion passes 4-1. Consider deed in lieu of taxes for 27 Snow Road. This over to you.
Yep. So 27 Stowe Road is right about where we just redid the Stowe Road culvert. So it's between Great Meadow and Cider Mill Pond. So if you're heading up towards George Hill on Stowe, on the right is Cider Mill, on the left is the property that we're talking about here tonight. So the property is essentially just a continuation of Great Meadow, right? It's got a lot of wildlife activity there. It's predominantly wetland and doesn't have, as far as I can tell, any development potential. So this is a property that appears to have been, and we have other properties like this around town as well. So I don't want to paint this in any particular way, but this is a property that, got handed down over generations, and nobody particularly wants to pay the taxes on it because you can't do anything with it. It's just a pond and a wetland. And so currently the tax title on that property is about $45,000. We are unlikely to recoup any of those dollars, right? This is not something that we could take and sell and make the taxpayers' money back in any monetary value, although there is a great deal of conservation value as it, like I said, directly abuts Great Meadow. And then if you look at that in a broader sense, we own Great Meadow and then potentially this as a continuation of Great Meadow. And then with the exception of Cider Mill Pond, we then own everything down all the way down Silver all the way down Silver Lake and across the street there. So we would have a pretty good conservation corridor being formed there. What a deed in lieu of taxes is, basically it allows the landowner to sign over their property to the town in exchange for us clearing that tax title debt. It's less expensive than us going through the tax title process and needing to go to court and doing all of those other processes. And it still requires town meeting approval, so even if we do this whole deed in lieu process and the residents don't agree that we should own this parcel, then it doesn't go through. there are two bites of the apple, in my opinion, for the select board here. The first one is to give your assent that I should move forward with this project, and if so, then I would order a title search and start doing all the background work that needs to happen beforehand. We would then draft the deed in lieu of taxes, which the select board would vote to accept, and then it would go to town meeting for final vote. So that's essentially the project or the process. It's pretty straightforward. Thanks, Will. It's pretty straightforward. If you look at the map here, the blue is what we're talking about right now, and the yellow is the current property we own, known as Great Meadow. So it's a good chunk. It's about 10.3 acres. And as you can see, it's pretty wet.
Who owns the little hook that goes into the yellow from the blue?
The little hook that goes into the yellow from the blue, it's just water, I think.
Oh.
You're talking about on the right hand picture, it goes in, kind of looks like a fork.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's just water. It's just the way our
Map.
yeah.
Okay.
Just always keep in mind when you're looking at GIS, it's just a cartoon floated over a satellite image, so it's not representative 100% all the time.
Okay.
But yeah, if you're looking for input, which no one has asked for, I think it's a good project, and I think it's a good process for the town to get some nice conservation property with some really high value flowing downstream.
Perfect.
And the current owner doesn't live on that property?
No, there's no dwellings, no anything. So I spoke to the owner's daughter. The owner is an elderly woman. I think she's in her 90s. Again, no real means or motivation to pay back taxes on land that you can't use for anything. The other problem that this property has is that even the section that appears dry, it's not super dry, but it also has no real means of access. So, again, no real monetary value, but high conservation value.
Yeah, my only concern, again, not having walked the parcel, was if there was a residence on there, not wanting to remove them prematurely, but that's clearly not the case, so.
Yeah, and just to be clear, if it had a residence on it, I would not be bringing it to you for a deed in lieu of taxes.
Mr. Chair, if I might be allowed to speak.
Sure.
So I'm going to be wearing my Open Space and Recreation Committee hat for these remarks, and basically two things. One, this parcel ranked pretty high on our open space or our parcel prioritization project that we did a couple of years back. So that speaks consistent with how Evan has described the value. This speaks to the value of this property, and I think as open space people, I'm sure we'd love to see this acquired. And the other so nitpicky detail to make sure you probably already know this, but either on the deed or the town meeting or both, it should specify that this is controlled by the Conservation Commission.
Yep.
That makes it Article 97 land, not that there would ever be any question of selling it, but put it under conservation control to get the maximum protection as open space.
Yep. Very good. Thank you, Dave.
Do you need a motion or anything from us tonight, or just a general?
I really don't. If there's no objections, then I'll move forward with the title search.
Any objections?
Nope. I think it's a great idea.
Yeah, go for it. Okay, Colleen, the flag policy was something of yours. Do you mind if we pass over that tonight and put it on the
Pass
future?
over it. It's fine.
Great. Okay, select board reports.
Attended the 4th of July parade. Thought it was a phenomenal turnout. Felt like half the town was in the parade, half the town was at the parade. I thought it was absolutely wonderful that the farmers market had been moved to that Saturday, so that once everyone had sort of finished the route, they had a place to go, and I thought it was great that all the vendors could attend. It was just a wonderful town and community building event, and I was so happy to see so many smiling faces.
It was. Piggybacking on that, I wanted to congratulate our new doggy mare, Figgy Massey, and his human, Anna.
His human.
Anybody else? Okay. I was also invited to the Unitarian Universalist Society of Grafton and Upton to participate in their reading of Frederick Douglass. Frederick Douglass's What is a Slave to the 4th of July. On this past Sunday, it was great. Just a really powerful presentation. The library was one of the event partners here, and Katrina, the library director, was also one of the readers. Peg Ferraro and Ken Crater from the Grafton Historical Society were there, and the other readers were other residents and members of the congregation. I found it interesting. I learned that night that Grafton is specifically mentioned in Frederick Douglass's autobiography. And not in a great way. It was one of the towns that was not terribly inviting. But after he borrowed a bell from one of the local inns, walked the streets, invited people to the common, and then found residents were much more hospitable and agreeable. So it ended well, but it's I felt an interesting little tidbit to that. So TA report.
You got it. So Fisherville Pond spraying begins on Thursday. This is an aerial photo of all of the water chestnut. There's some other species in there too, but it's predominantly chestnut. So we're going to take some during photos just to have those on record, and then we'll do, a month from now we'll do another aerial and see what the process looks like. But it is extremely thick. This is from that Riverside Park side. If you head down there, you wind up at Fisherville Mill and the dam, and there's that section right behind where Fisherville Mill used to be. It's more of a rectangle looking thing where the lock was and all of that. And so, not lock, it's a gate of some kind, but you know what I'm talking about.
The waterfall?
Yeah. Well, there's a waterfall, but on the other side, there's still the mechanical gate stuff. Right. So anyways, long story short, we're going to treat that as well. I could have just gone right into that. But we're very excited to see some progress on this and try to make a dent in this issue. It's pretty bad. Will just added this. This is a surprise to me. So we have the SMILE grant, as Andy mentioned earlier. So we're one of 6 communities to receive that grant, and so we'll be floating the wheelchair to increase accessibility, or we'll provide the town with a floating wheelchair. So the unveiling ceremony will be August 4th at 11 a.m. at Silver Lake. So come on out and check that out.
Very cool.
Yeah, it's a very good get from our rec department. So I'm just going to give a brief update on Route 122. So as we again did our moment of silence at the beginning of the meeting, we had a fatal accident at the corner of Milford Road and 122. So we had a meeting with Rep. Meridian, Senator Moore, representatives of MassDOT, GPD, GFD, Town Engineer, DPW Director. There was a lot of us out there. Our new planner was there as well. Chair of the Select Board was there. I was there. Will was there. It was a lot of us. And so the general takeaway is that one, we're looking at the entirety of 122 and all of the intersections along it for potential improvements that could be made, because they are paving that section in the spring of 2027. So now is the time for us to make adjustments. Specifically, we already have in the works some adjustments to be made at Pleasant Street. We have some likely realignment and changes that will happen at Milford Road, and probably some other intersections that require some more minor tweaking than Pleasant and Milford. Specific to Milford, we talked to the state about doing some short-term changes, which are electronic speed signs, the flashing slow down type of things. updating some signage, and then starting a speed study in that area. Longer term, they're talking about adding a flashing beacon there, which is a traffic light that doesn't change, right? So it's just Milford Road gets a flashing red, 122 gets a flashing yellow. Some other signage on the approach that would probably, draw some more awareness to that intersection coming up. Realigning that intersection so that it discourages people cutting the lane when they're heading up the hill, or waving people out at the bottom of the hill, because that's what's causing a lot of these issues. Is people are going to make a left up Milford, they wave somebody out of Milford, and that person is paying attention to the person waving them out and pulls out in front of somebody. We've had a number of accidents along those lines. And they're also talking about narrowing lane widths on the way to and from, along with some other kind of minor tweaks that they had talked about. And we'll be getting more information from the state as we go here in the next several weeks. But all in all, good meeting. Thanks to Representative Meridian for pulling it together on pretty short notice. And it was nice to see, although a tragic event, everybody come together and kind of start to look at cohesive solutions to the whole stretch. Paving update, we are done with Laura, Danielle, Alana, Blanchard, Patricia, that whole area. There's some minor work, but I would call it substantially complete. All the fixtures have been reset and replaced, and so now we just have a little cleanup work to do, but it came out pretty nice. George Hill Road tree work starts tomorrow. They are starting at the Leland Street end and working their way towards Fay Mountain. I did put out a code red to the residents in that area to let them know that tree work starts tomorrow morning.
Great.
And I did not put in, Colleen's looking at me, I forgot entirely to add a control group for people that wanted for the board to know the message. I will do that. But yeah, otherwise, business as usual.
Thank you.
Great. Okay.
Mr. Chair, Anne Marie has her hand up.
Ms. Foley.
Thank you. Is there an update on the website too, Evan, relative to George Hill?
There will be by the morning. There is not one currently because we just found out right before coming in here at about 4 o'clock. So.
Okay, thanks.
It's in the works, but everybody, I hit like 28 residents, individual households along the street that have signed up for alerts. So, and we'll push that out again tomorrow. So.
Okay. Any correspondence anybody wish to discuss? Do. Okay, we have meeting minutes for the Municipal Solid Waste Advisory Committee that are outstanding that we're being asked to approve tonight.
I move the board vote to approve the meeting minutes of the Municipal Solid Waste Advisory Committee for January 21st and February 3rd of 2026 as written.
Second.
Okay, motion made, seconded. Any discussion? Hearing none. Ms. Roy?
Aye.
Ms. Dauphiné?
Dauphiné, aye.
Ms. Duckworth?
Aye.
Ms. Foley?
Fully aye.
Jefferson, aye. Motion passes. Take a meeting to adjourn.
So moved.
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
Okay, by roll call, Ms. Roy?
Aye.
Ms. Dauphiné?
Dauphiné, aye.
Ms. Duckworth?
Aye.
Ms. Foley?
Fully aye.
Jefferson, aye. We are adjourned.